You are watching Channel Africa Conversations.
The government that is incoming, that she's bringing in, will be a leadership that will be based on accounting, deliver services to the people, and be accountable to the people. When people say, we want apples, don't give them bananas.
Hello and welcome to Channel Africa Conversations. I'm Peter Ndoro. Namibia has made history by electing its first female president, Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah. The current vice president and candidate for the ruling Swapos party was declared winner of last week's presidential election with 58% of the vote. Now, this victory continues Swapos' unbroken 34-year dominance since it got its independence in 1990 from South Africa. However, the election process was not without controversy, technical challenges, including ballot paper shortages, that led to the extension of the voting process by an additional 3 days. And the opposition parties plan to challenge those results. Well, we take a look this morning at today's program at the election outcome, what it means for the country and the country's future. And to help us unpack that is Dr. Charles Mubita, who's Swapos' who's Rector for the party's political school. Thank you very much indeed for joining us and welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So, your party won the election, but perhaps it was closer than you had wanted.
Definitely. We had thought we would be able to get more than what actually came out. However, elections are just like that. They are full of surprises. We are not too happy, particularly with the National Assembly election results, because we would have wanted to have an overwhelming majority that will help us to pass laws that would bring meaningful change to our people. On the other hand, we are happy that our presidential candidate, the president-elect, Her Excellency Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah, won the presidential race.
So, big question then, was this the will of the people given the way that the election was run in the end?
The will of the people can only be interpreted with what came out as a result. So obviously we would accept it as the will of the people, irrespective of the challenges that we faced. As you said earlier, a shortage of ballot papers at some polling stations, extension of days and all that. Well, there were circumstances that led to that. The ECN will, at some point in time, be able to tell us fully what happened. But be that as it may, we believe people of Namibia were given a chance to cast their votes, and they did so.
You don't think that there were people that were disenfranchised that might have affected the outcome of the election?
I have my doubts. There could have been, there might be, and maybe there were people that were disadvantaged, that they didn't cast their votes. But as to the significant number of those people to be able to have an effect on the election results, that is a bit debatable.
So for the longest time in the run-up to this election, if we were to believe the media, it seemed as if that the opposition parties were going to trounce the governing party. We saw what happened in Botswana, and we saw what we believe has been a very contentious election in Mozambique. Were you worried at all?
No, the Swapos party was not worried, not for a single moment. Yes, we listened to what the media was saying. We listened to what social media was saying. We listened to what some people who masquerade as political analysts were saying. Some were saying Jesus is in Botswana and he's headed to Namibia. But Botswana and Namibia are not the same. We have visa restrictions for such type of people. Maybe that's why I didn't come here. But be that as it may, we are also cognizant of the fact that there is an onslaught right now on not only SWAPO party, but on all the liberation movements in the Southern African region. There are forces that would want to make sure that the liberation movements in Southern Africa are things of the past. They want to take over. So we were really not worried. We knew that the people understood and knew what is at stake. And we, as Namibians, had to rely on Namibians. Most of that propaganda that was coming, even though some seemed as if they were coming from the opposition parties, the propaganda was actually coming from outside Namibia.
Talk to us a little bit about those forces. Who were they, and what are the kinds of things that they did to interfere in the electoral process in your country?
You see, an election is a psychological game. When you get in there, you need to ensure that your mentality, your mindset are strong enough. You cannot be persuaded or influenced or misled. So propaganda was the first thing that was churned out. The first thing that happened was the EU here had actually had a meeting, a lunch meeting with one of the opposition parties, which is not in parliament. But at the end of that meeting, they issued a statement where at the end of the statement, they were saying that the leader of the IPC is the incoming president. So that you are concluding a game between Liverpool and Manchester United before the whistle is blown. You know, you cannot do that unless, you can only say so confidently, unless you know of what it is that you are putting in the basket. So that was the first warning bell for the Namibian people, that we realized that these elections seem not only to be of interest to us as Namibians, but of interest to other forces outside. Secondly, I believe it was on this particular channel where you had an interview with one professor who is somewhere in Sweden, Henning Melba, who spoke as though he was the prophet himself of Namibian politics. And he made an assurance to the audience that, look, SWAPO will not win these elections. And on the back of that, the media here, the private media, also were propagating the same story, that the SWAPO will be defeated in these elections, but they were not coming up with facts. Henning Melba told you about, according to polls. There was no poll that was conducted. He never made any reference in poll. So that politics was being churned out throughout the private media, antagonistic media for that matter, and it was all over the world, all over the nation. So people, some people with no strong mindset, no strong mentality, were somehow swayed that maybe this is a reality. But that was just the fantasy of the detractors of SWAPO, which was being, turned around as if it was based on fact. So the interest of the outside forces and internal forces was very prevalent in these elections, and we cannot shy away from that. And we know it as a fact that even at the end of the elections, there are certain forces that are not very happy. For example, right now you have a challenge, a court challenge. It's only that I cannot play out, a clip for you, but you would see that the court challenge emanated from someone who urged one political party to go to court and not accept the election results. So now you start asking yourself, is this really a Namibian-born challenge, or is it a Namibian-born political party? So evidence is there, things happened, but we are not going to cry and go back. We will have to deliver to our people to make sure that our people understand that we won this election for simple reason that we want to deliver services to them.
But you have to put your hand up, though, that Swapos government perhaps could have done better. Unemployment has reached shocking levels, the economy not doing as well as it could. And most of citizens, when journalists were asking them, what are you voting about? They were talking about finding jobs. Isn't that something that was in your party's hands?
Unemployment is a worrying factor anywhere in the world. You would not want your citizens to not be employed. You want every other person to be able to put bread on their table. However, I think sometimes we are being disingenuous. It's like, you know, you get into a country and you say there's so much death in this particular country. Every day people are bearing, but you don't make reference to the fact that while people are dying, there are those who are being born. And if you don't come up with the statistics of how many people have been employed in a year, you only come with the statistics of how many people are unemployed, you are being unfair. Because it's much better that you compare apple to apple. Yes, we agree. We are not running away from the fact that there's unemployment in the country. But on the other hand, there is a lot of employment. But you need to know that as much as the more you employ people, the more other people need employment. Because every other year, universities and colleges, they produce graduates who need employment. So we understand that. And on the other hand, also, government can employ people, but government, the best thing that government can do is to make the environment conducive for the private sector to be able to also employ a number of people, and also to make sure that our people are empowered to create jobs for themselves. And this is what we plan to do, and this is what our president-elect has emphasized, that going forward, there should be no Namibian who is unemployed. We will do everything possible to make sure that every Namibian is employed.
Who voted for SWAPO? One of the things that we're seeing in the region is that a lot of the governing parties, liberation parties, have been getting their support mostly from rural areas. Was that the same in Namibia?
Our stronghold is the rural areas. There's no running away from that fact. And the reason is simple. The liberation movements, all of them, were established, born from the masses of the people. So the masses of the people have an obligation, and they feel that obligation, that they are the ones who actually created these liberation movements for one purpose, to liberate the country politically and liberate the country economically. They do understand that it took us 30 years to fight, with an armed liberation struggle, 30 years to fight and get independence. But they are also convinced that it will take us maybe double that time for us to be able to get economic independence, because the hold on our economy is so ruthless, is so merciless that it requires a great deal from the nation to understand that once a government takes radical economic reforms, there are repercussions. repercussions, some of them in the form of sanctions from those who basically control the world economy. So in order to get that, we need to be careful. Yes, our support is basically rural-based because those are people who understand. Yes, we also have support in the urban areas. But you see, most of the opposition parties, especially the new ones, they are created from the urban and they are detached from the actual reality in Namibia.
Are you confident that the election itself, as chaotic as it was in the end, was transparent enough and even legal? I mean, these are the questions that the courts will have to decide, but from your standpoint?
Well, as a Swapos party, we got into an election. We understood very well the Electoral Act. We understood the electoral law. We understood the code of conduct of the ECN, and we had to abide by those. Our election polling agents were in all the constituencies and at all polling stations. They observed what they observed, and most of what they observed is public knowledge. That in some polling stations, there were shortages of ballot papers, that some polling stations were opened a bit late, some closed, with some people still outside in the queue. We understood that, hence the extension. So one cannot say every other game. That's why you find in any given game, there are yellow cards and red cards and all those things. So you, at the end of the day, you have to rely on your own performance, not on the performance of the referee. So we got in the election not expecting the ECN to be in our favor or to be against us, but we knew the ECN is there. So chaotic, if that is the word to be accepted, that the elections were chaotic, they produced a result. And the result has been accepted. Obviously, one party is crying foul, but at the same time, what need to alarm you is that we have two elections in one. You have the National Assembly elections, and then you have the presidential elections. So you cannot say you eat goat meat, but you don't eat the soup of goat, right? So if you are going to contest that the elections were not fair, then make sure that you're also contesting the ones for the parliamentary, the National Assembly elections. Don't accept one and not accept the other, because it's one game. These things took place at the same time, on the same day. So, yes, we are, I don't want to say much. I don't want to get in detail regarding the court challenges and all that, because that would be sub judice, and the case is before the court. Whether it merits to be there or not, is for the court to answer.
What lessons have Swapos learned as a result of this election, and also what's happening in the region? You talked about liberation parties. You offered a reason that external influences perhaps may be coming to play, or it could just be that there's a younger generation that don't have the same affinity to your parties because they weren't there. I wonder what your thinking is about what we're seeing in the region, reduced majorities and sometimes even losing the majority by some of the liberation parties, and even your country where your majority has been shrinking.
Yeah, no, there are many factors. There are many factors that contribute to the dwindling support. One, we were not where we were in 1989 during our first independence election, or in 2014 or 2019. The population has grown. That's one factor, we know that. Secondly, you see, the tactic being used by outside forces has nothing to do with the policies of the liberation movements, because our policies, our programs are intact. They are people-centered projects and programs. So they can't attack us from that angle. And what they've done in the ANC, in Swapos, in MPLA, Frelimo, and ZANU-PF, including CCM, Chama Pinduzi, is to plant within our midst people who would try to hijack from within. So you have internal conflicts. You have people that infiltrated in the liberation movements, some of whom their credentials are not anything to write home about. But because as a liberation movement we are accommodating, and remember, liberation movements, all of them, have had one particular system, which is to accommodate every citizen of the country within their midst. And that can be a very good thing, but it can also be a challenge, because some of the people that you bring in, they come in looking for employment, not necessarily to help the liberation movements to grow or to become strong. So you have a lot of these people that come in with ill intentions. And we are aware of that. The ANC is aware of that. Almost all the liberation movements are aware of that. The external forces will not rest as long as they know that our program, our focus, our vision is to make sure that we liberate these countries economically, and we capacitate our people to take over the management of our economy. They will never be happy. As long as we have that kind of vision, they will never be happy. And they'll make sure that they do everything in their power to reverse and to slow us down to achieving that.
We know that there's a kinship between the liberation movements in the region, and I just wonder if it is a kinship that sticks no matter what the circumstances are on the ground, even when some of your brothers and sisters perhaps are not doing as they should.
No, I think that's a perception. That's a perception. We talk to each other. Liberation movements talk to each other. They cancel each other. We come from far. There were times in the 70s and early 60s where other liberation movements came to the aid of others to make sure that, the liberation movement is not destroyed. We would not change now that we are independent. We would not turn a blind eye to a brother or a sister that's going through certain challenges or that's going wayward. We would always come and talk to each other and say, brother, sister, here we believe maybe you need to do this, maybe you need to do this. It is on the basis of that you have formations of organizations to bring us together. The Frontline States was created for that purpose. The SADC itself was created for that purpose. The liberation movement's organization that is on now, where all these liberation movements meet every now and then to take stock of what's happening in their country, was created for that purpose. So we talk to each other. It's not that maybe we turn a blind eye to ourselves. We are very, as Namibians, We are proud and would protect the liberation of South Africa, of Mozambique, of Angola, of Zimbabwe, the same way we'll protect the liberation of Namibia. So there is no way we would see our brothers going off the rail and just keep quiet. We wouldn't do that.
What is Swapos' position on what's happening in Mozambique right now?
Well, Mozambique, I think it has been settled. But you see, the simplest thing in Mozambique is that it was not an election challenge. Those were, it's a politics that had been there for years, since the establishment of Renamo. So Mozambique's situation has nothing to do with the elections. It has everything to do with internal politics. Internal politics is fueled from outside. You know that they discovered oil in Cabo Delgado. The same thing we discovered oil here. And all this interference, it has nothing to do with rudimentary politics. It has everything to do with real politics, which is the protection of the interests of the West. So with Mozambique, our position is very clear. We will stand by Frelimo because we are aware that nothing went wrong in Mozambique in terms of their election laws, in terms of the election procedures. Nothing went wrong. These are all machinations that come from outside Mozambique to try to destabilize Mozambique so that outside forces can continue benefiting from the resources of Mozambique, including the oil that has been discovered in Cabo Delgado.
And looking to the future in your country, what do you think President Nandi-Ndaitwah's presidency will bring and change to Namibia?
Well, I'm very excited, very excited. President-elect Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah has 5 principles, 5 philosophical principles which she wants to bring on board. And these are principles that made her who she is. And the principles, in abbreviations, you would call them the PIAMI, P-I-A-M-I. The first one being pragmatism. She believes in pragmatic leadership, action-centered leadership, a leadership that delivers. That's one of the principles that she believes in. The second principle is integrity. She believes in an ethical leadership, a leadership that is not tainted by any corruption, that is not tainted by unethical conduct. She believes in that. And truly, she'll clean up the incoming leadership. She'll make sure that Namibia will be as clean as snow. The third is accountability. She is very strong on accountability. She believes every leader has to account and face consequences for every action that you take. You know, and a leadership has to be accountable to the people, not accountable to another person, not accountable to anything else, but accountable to the people. Therefore, the government that is incoming, that she's bringing in, will be a leadership that will be based on accounting, deliver services to the people, and be accountable to the people. When people say, we want apples, don't give them bananas. The fourth principle that she believes in strongly is meritocracy. Meritocracy. She believes you do not have to appoint people or put people in positions where they do not merit or warrant to be there. Merit should be the key that unlocks a position for any individual Namibian. Therefore, any Namibian who has the capacity to do a job should feel that they have the chance, they have the right to be employed, to hold a position that is commensurate to their education, commensurate to their skills, right? And then the last one, the last principle is inclusivity. Inclusivity, Namibia is a diverse nation. We have too many tribes, too many regions, too many religious groups, too many ethnicities and all that. And she believes that you need to put unity at the center of this diversity. Unity should be at the center of this diverse nation. That we move together, hold hands as Namibians. We should be inclusive in such a sense that we feel at home. We should not feel as if we are outsiders. Namibia is ours, we should feel at home. So those are the 5 principles that President-elect Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah will be bringing to the table when she takes over on the 21st of March, 2025.
Dr. Charles Mubita, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much indeed for your time and joining us on Channel Africa Conversations.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
And that's how we come to the end of this edition of Channel Africa Conversations. Before I go, please make sure that you communicate with us. We'd love you to land on our social media pages, and they're on your screen now. And in fact, you can even start on this channel by pressing the like and subscribe buttons. We look forward to hearing your thoughts on what you're seeing, what you're hearing. And we'd also like to hear from you. What kind of conversations do you want us to have? Who do you want these conversations to be with? Drop us a note on the comment section below. Until the next time, take care.